Welcome to Caring.
Welcome to Caring Well.
Welcome to Caring Well.
Welcome to Caring Well.
Caring Well. Welcome to Caring Well.
Welcome to Caring Well.
Welcome to Caring Well, a Middleton Pediatrics podcast where we have conversations to help you care well for your child. Today we have a conversation with Theresa Smith-Levin. She's the founder of Central Florida Vocal Arts, and she's going to share about her organization and the dramatic and perhaps surprising ways that the music and arts can help your child be even healthier. Teresa, welcome to Caring Well. So glad to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I look forward to just hearing a lot about kind of your heart for this community and how that plays out through music. I would love just to get to know you a little bit first.
Sure.
And so tell us a little bit about your background and then how you ended up doing what you were doing today.
Absolutely. So I am a lifelong Central Florida native. I was born in Winter Park Hospital. I went through Orange County Public Schools. I went through the choral program at Winter Park High School. And then my undergraduate degree is in music education and Spanish from UCF. My master's is in vocal performance from Miami. And I had full intentions on being a voice teacher and a performer. And life had a different plan for me, and I became a nonprofit founder overnight. And that has been my journey for the last 13 years. And because I didn't have a background in nonprofit training, it allowed me to sort of learn on the job, if you will, and be responsive to what the community needed us to be and to fill some of those gaps. And I'm so excited to be here because one of my passions in the work that we do, especially over the past few years, has been the work at the intersection of arts and wellness and a lot of the research around how catalytic and impactful arts can be, especially in youth development.
So you said something there that piqued my interest overnight.
Yes.
So there's a story there.
There sure is.
Yeah, please share.
I was doing a show, A Mall and the Night Visitors, which is a Menotti operetta. It's a Christmas operetta. I had been cast in the lead soprano role. One of my students was playing the boy soprano role of Amal. We'd been working on the score for several months, and it was a theater out in Lake County. And they found that they couldn't actually cast the male talent needed for the show. There just weren't a lot of local Lake County opera singers, male opera singers out there. And so they canceled the show. That sort of thing happens often, honestly, in the entertainment industry. And I really didn't think much of it. I was 26. I went to bed and I woke up in the middle of the night with you have to do this. I couldn't go back to sleep. And so I sat at my kitchen counter and went mentally through my Rolodex. Did I have enough contacts to cast the show? Did I have enough relationships with prospective venues to be able to host the show? Being a Christmas operetta, I thought I could use some of my connections with churches that were local, do a profit share. And I also knew that I would have to raise funds in order to pay my performers. And so in order to do that, I knew we would probably have to have 501c3 status. So within 24 hours, I had this idea of having a nonprofit. And before 5 o'clock the next day, I filed paperwork and articles of incorporation. You don't email those things back in 2012. You have to mail them. So mailed that off. We did it right on the first time. So got that status. And it's been a journey ever since.
Okay, so you said something about I saw a need, and it was obviously represented by that episode there.
Mm-hmm.
But elaborate on what the need, as you thought about the need in our community,
Mm-hmm.
what was lacking that you felt compelled to try to help fill?
So I think at that point, it was twofold. I had gone to grad school, and while I was there, Orlando Opera Company had folded. So we didn't have a true opera company. And so I was coming back into the community where I grew up, and we didn't have that option. And here I was with a master's degree in vocal performance and wanting more opportunities. And also opportunities to create art that felt relevant, that felt like it spoke to my peers, that people wanted to come to and were inspired by, as opposed to attending out of obligation because they loved me. So I wanted to take this art form that I was passionate about and bring it to people in a way that spoke to them. So that was one. Two, I was voice teaching, and I found that a lot of students who had a lot of talent were not able to access those meaningful individual training opportunities because they are cost prohibitive. And I might even be teaching a student. This actually happened where we were working together, incredibly talented students, and the family had a car accident. And then they had these medical bills and different bills with the car, and then they could no longer afford to take lessons. So I was just driving out there and teaching them anyways. And I knew a lot of my peers were doing the same. But there had to be a better way. There had to be a way that teachers were able to be paid for their time while they're working with these students, and students don't have to lose this opportunity. So even from the beginning, I knew that those two things needed to be a part of the model, that we were going to create accessible, meaningful arts opportunities for all students, and we were going to create art that spoke to a modern audience and inspired them.
So identifying the barrier, and one of which is, accessibility and cost. How maybe a way to answer the question of how do you do that today, kind of paint a picture for us of what Central Florida Vocal Arts looks like in 2025.
So we have basically two different programmatic pillars. We have our main stage productions. That's when we do a production at the Dr. Phillips Center, when we're working with other nonprofits and organizations to offer contracted performances that often help uplift their mission, help them to do their work better, bringing music and art into what they're already doing. Because I think we also have to examine the economy of time. So a lot of people don't have time sovereignty. So even if they had the fiscal means to be able to attend a performance, do they have the time to do so? So infusing music and art into places where people are already living, working, playing. So that's our production side of things. We offer opportunities for groups that otherwise wouldn't be able to afford tickets, need reduced cost tickets to be able to attend those performances too, because I think there's something really empowering when a student who otherwise might not feel like they belong at the Dr. Phillips Center is welcomed there, and not just to be there as a charity case, but they feel a true sense of welcome and belonging. That can be something, especially when a young person is struggling, can help them see that it's more than just the everyday grind, that there is something bigger, brighter to aspire to. So that's our production end of things. Our education end of things is very, very robust. And we have a multitude of programs, community classes with partners like the Boys and Girls Club. Quest is one of our prospective partners, OCA, working with neurodivergent youth as well, creating inclusive spaces. So that's one part of accessibility, because if the arts aren't a place where all people can belong, I really don't know where is. So we need to make sure that all kids feel welcome in those spaces and are celebrated for what they can do. And so that has been a model from the very beginning, but we work with different groups who are working with vulnerable populations for that reason as well. One of our most impactful programs is a program called Arts One to One. Started off being called Bridging the Music Education Gap. That was started in 2019 by Scott Evans, who was the Orange County Public Schools art superintendent, and I, around a curriculum to offer individual lessons to Title I school students. Because at a 30,000-foot level, if you think that a culture is defined by the art that we consume and the stories we tell, if only certain people are ever able to access that level of storytelling, then you get a very narrow scope of a lived experience. Whereas if we can make sure that we level that playing field even just a little bit to help more voices be amplified, we have a broader perspective of our communities, of our culture. We create a more celebratory, inclusive space. So that's the big sort of Pollyanna vision of what this can be. We started that program in 2019. The 2019-2020 school year was what it was. And so halfway through, they shut it all down. And we were going in person and doing those programs. And we had 10 students in Title I schools. Well, we were a small company. We still don't have a space of our own. So that meant when not going in person happened, we were already on the Teams Zoom bus, if you will, because we didn't have an office. And so I was really passionate and said, we can bring this program back. You're already delivering school curriculum through video conferencing. We can do the same thing. And so we got that back up before the end of the school year. And we've gone from having 10 students in Orange County Public Schools to now offering it also in Osceola County Public Schools and serving over 100 kids a week with individual free lessons. And why this is so impactful is it's not just a one-off transaction. These are kids that can start in 6th grade and go through 12th grade every single week for a half hour one-on-one with an adult teaching artist, but also a mentor for them, because these kids may not have anybody else in their world where they can sit down, have important conversations, hear that they are talented, they are capable, they are so proud of how hard they have worked on their music that week. So it's a lot more than just music. So that program has been incredible. One of our students who is graduating this year, Diego, he has been in the program since he was in 6th grade. So he's been in it the whole time, which is really, really incredible. And one of the things that makes me most proud is not only is he going on to pursue this collegiately, he is a student who is vulnerable. He is from time to time at risk of being unhoused. And he also created a nonprofit organization at his school that helps kids who don't have access to good dental hygiene. And I mean, that's the dream, right? I love when we have kids who go on to be artists, and I love it so much more when they go on to be really great people who want to make change in their world, help uplift others. And so we try and identify all the different barriers to access, which, yes, are sometimes financial. They're often transportation. They're often time sovereignty. I think an interesting paradigm that I see is kids who are in very, very low economic situations often have the exact same challenges of kids who are in very, very high economic situations. So their parents may not be able to, because if you have a really high powered job, you may not be able to take your kid to where they want to go, or even have, I'm guilty of it too, the bandwidth to figure out how to schedule all the activities and different things that you want your child to engage in. You also have the issue of, especially low economic families, um, they may not feel comfortable supporting a child pursuing arts, because if they're struggling to pay rent and put food on the table, you always want something better for your kids. So you're not saying, sure, go on and become a starving artist, because you want them not to suffer like you have. And also, our students from very, very wealthy families, those families feel more comfortable when they see their student going on often to be a lawyer or a doctor or an otherwise very prestigious career. And so these kids who really their calling might be to be artists and storytellers have that barrier of us also having to uplift the family and empower the family with more knowledge about all the different opportunities in the art sector.
What are the societal factors and trends and influences that you see undervaluing the arts?
People do not realize how valuable arts can be to solving almost every major social problem that we encounter today. A great example, I was fortunate to work with the Ginsberg Institute on their Child Health Equity Symposium. I was a panelist on that, and I helped them create this exercise for the attendees around examining a profile of a child who was at risk in need in a multitude of facets. Though I'll give you an example of one student. She was suffering from food insecurity, and she had a parent pass away. It was just dad. She was in 1st grade. She had a snack in her bag, but it wasn't a sufficient amount of food. How were we going to help support this child? What resources were available to this child? Um, in my mind, I see, first of all, we talk about raising your voice and being confident enough to be honest and vulnerable about the situation that you find yourself in. That's an opportunity for dad to do that. That's an opportunity for a child to say, "Hey, this is what I need," and to advocate for herself as well. I think singing and the voice is a really unique opportunity to teach that skill. If I meet a trumpet player and I say, "Oh, I don't really care for the timbre, the tone of trumpet." Typically, they don't take that as a personal offense. If you tell somebody you don't care for their voice, they do. It's an immutable part of them. And so you are both the artist and the player of the instrument, right? And so that's really unique and it's really vulnerable. So if I can convince a young person to share their unique voice, I can help them to use that voice in other situations that have critical impacts on their lives. Youth mental health. Arts is a huge opportunity, an accessible and not as stigmatized opportunity to support young people in creative expression, in overall well-being. And there's so much research going on right now, and that's what I am emboldened by, is there's a lot of research going on right now. There's a lot of trends in place that I'm seeing around measurable outcomes, not only in how students self-report feeling, actual brain chemistry. They're seeing these different the physiology of the brain changing by both participation and consumption of art. But if I can get a kid to sing, if I can help them to feel confident in that space, everything else becomes a lot easier. They're able to talk about what they're going through. And we know that oftentimes that's the first step to improving mental health outcomes. We talk about youth mental health a lot, but I think you see it at all age levels. I think there are plenty of middle-aged moms who would love to figure out how to battle a lot of mental health challenges. And I think being able to be creative, to be grounded, to be authentic, to be courageous, that's a great start. And those are outcomes that we can foster through performing arts
So how do
success.
you scale that? And I guess I
Mhm.
mean, even beyond the formal ways you're doing it.
Mhm.
So take a home and what are some practical ways that, or take a school. I mean,
Mhm.
how do those principles permeate more for people that probably would benefit from it, but might not pursue it as a specific activity?
Yeah. When I tell people what I do, the first reaction oftentimes is, oh my gosh, you wouldn't want to hear me sing. I'm toned out. I'm a terrible singer, right? I say, that's not true. I would love to hear you sing because, and as a pediatrician, you see this every day. Children come out playing, dancing, singing, making noises, being joyful in that creative expression. And somewhere in elementary school, typically, and I think it's around fourth grade, they start to censor. They start to stop using their voice so freely. They start being self-critical around that. And that's normal developmentally to some degree. We see it in other aspects of life too. But the the sad part is they stop singing entirely and they don't come back to it. And I always tell people, if you stopped walking when you were in fourth grade, you wouldn't be great at walking either. Singing is a matter of coordination. That's it. So the more you do it, the better you get at it. So when we talk about how do we generalize that, right? It starts with adults being unabashedly creative and artistic because we're modeling it for kids. So if you want a kid to feel confident in their own artistry, be artistic and don't criticize your art like, "Oh my gosh, that sounded terrible. That wasn't good." Just sing. Sing around the house, sing in school, make it a part of the culture because it doesn't need to be a professional pursuit. All human beings are artists. By virtue of being living and breathing right here, every single person is an artist. And if you are able to sort of time machine back to being a little one, you can remember that. And if you have your own kids, you see that. So we need to model that in order to cultivate generations that are going to live in that space too. I'm never going to be a visual artist at a professional level. It doesn't mean I can't enjoy coloring with my kids, right? And I model that, and then that helps them to be excited about that, and that makes them a more whole human being.
You said, and there's probably some developmental aspects, but are there any things that you would love to see? You talked about modeling,
Mhm.
but things that are contributing to that inhibition that
Absolutely.
could be done away with. And so you mentioned not being self-critical because that's going to make the child more
Mhm.
self-critical. But
Mhm.
what else, as far as in a school or in a family?
Absolutely. There's no good way when you see a parent do it to call it out in that moment. But I, on a regular basis, see parents inadvertently do things that will live in their child's head forever. Um, the other day I was at a pool and I heard a mom go, "Ugh, honey, that's so loud. Please, people don't want to hear you sing." That will live in her head forever. If you talk to people who don't sing, adults who don't sing, almost all of them have a clear memory of someone saying something. Please don't become the voice that lives in that child, that teenager, and then that adult's head. W- When and again, as a voice teacher, I don't ever use sort of connotative words, good, bad tone. Uh, be specific, right? Oh, that's very loud. I love your voice. Could we try that a little bit softer? I want to hear you sing. Can you sing just for me? There's a way to reframe that doesn't damage that child. That yes is socially considerate and doesn't damage that child, right? At every moment that you can celebrate anyone's artistry, but especially a child's, do it. It has to become a part of the way we live. That in the school culture, in the home culture, we are celebrating creativity. I think a lot of times because we as adults have this sense of um, it's supposed to mean something or it's supposed to be a certain way or there is a good or bad, right? We might look at a child's drawing and go like, "Oh, what is that supposed to be?" I think that limits that creative expression. Because like, "Oh, is that a bird?" And he's like, "No, that's a palm tree." Like that that's not gonna feel great, you know what I mean? Like, "Wow, tell me about what you created. What inspired you? How do you feel when you make this?" Right? And feeling, in my opinion, is a really important part of this because in art, not all art is supposed to feel happy. But kids get the message a lot that the most acceptable emotion is happy, pleasant. Art is a space where you're allowed to feel angry.
Yeah, the whole gamut of human emotion,
Absolutely.
right? Yeah,
That's kind of the whole point.
that's right.
Theater, music, visual art is to feel it all. And there aren't a lot of spaces where you can do that. And so a lot of times, and not to make a generalization, but men have a hard time understanding art. And there's a whole bigger conversation around that and what we do to boys to make them feel like they're not allowed to be artistic and creative. But when I'm talking to men, I'm at, a networking event and they're talking about what we do and what we raise funds for. Immediately their first instinct is to go like, "Oh, but is there a lot of professional opportunity in that?" First of all, just that's not the only point. But second of all, yes. And when you put your child in youth soccer, I don't think a lot of us go, "I'm going to do this because he's going to be the next Cristiano Ronaldo." And so when you start them, they know that by putting them on a soccer team, they're going to develop resilience. They're going to work in a team and learn about cooperation and build physical skills, right? The thing is, when I went to softball practice, there wasn't a whole lot of space to process whatever was going on at
Right.
home. There was in choir.
Hmm.
I got all those outcomes and I got to feel fully. I got to have a place to channel and process whatever big emotions, upsetting things that I might have, or even really joyful things, that there was a space for that, a container for that to be used in a productive way.
What about school though? Think of we've even on this podcast we've sort of lamented. We've talked so much about what really is a concerning trend in children's mental health and multiple factors, one of which is loss of free play. And I think it'd be
Mhm.
very easy to call a lot of arts is a type of free play. But then also what schools, the time spent, I mean, if really what you value is what you spend time on and what you spend money on. And schools have dwindling recess, dwindling arts, I would think. You've seen this. If you were Secretary of Education, for what would you love to see happen in schools?
I think that there are a lot of ways to go about it. And I think the most important thing is there's not a one size fits all to building a successful child, right? But that's the model that we sort of adhere to, right? I have a first grader and a second grader, and we already do standardized testing, right? We have from the start. And I I fortunately was a student who did well in that setting, and my sister struggled with standardized tests, and she's brilliant. Not every kid performs the same assessment because there are different kinds of intelligent and there are different kinds of kids. And we need to celebrate that much broader spectrum of ability, of skill, of whole humanity, because those people also have a really important context in our society that they need to fill. But a lot of times we dim their light so early that they don't feel empowered to show up in that way. And they don't really self-actualize and become all they were really meant to be. Like, I'm all about arts. I'm all about voice. If I could go back in time, the one thing I would change, I would fix for every person is to raise them in a home that tells them they're capable of being everything that they want to be, that they can do whatever they want and just show up in action and word in that belief, and do that in schools too. Because unfortunately, we can't determine who someone's parent is, but we can say there are certain standards that we adhere to in this school. I was fortunate to go to Winter Park High School, and at that time, it was cool to be an arts kid. I was on homecoming court, and I feel like this has to be said because my husband, who did not go to Winter Park at the same time that I went, is like, "You were a choir nerd." I was like, "I was choir president, and I was also on homecoming court." So, like, let's
That's right.
be clear. I say that because we know that, like, athletes are sort of upheld as these celebrities of
Right.
the school. Show me your calendar, show me your bank account. I will know what you value. The same is true in the school. It's the same way we invest into those football players, into our athletes. We should be investing at the same level into our arts programs because we know research, data, it all shows it undisputedly how important this is to those students who participate and also to the culture of the school. I would love to see a study that analyzes trends around school violence and the quality and accessibility of their arts programs. I'm kids who have to sit in an arts classroom and think about how the character feels in that moment and inhabit their experience. That's empathy. And kids who are able to engage in empathy are not kids who want to bring guns to school. They're not. When we look at the trends in school violence, I think you can also look at the fact that we're not teaching kids how to deeply care about one another and understand one another. And arts is uniquely good at that.
Yeah. So that's really, I mean, kind of the thrust of all you do is this idea of, I don't want to put words in your organization's
You're
mouth,
good.
but building a community,
Mhm.
increasing the threads that tie us together of a community through the arts.
What I will say, a lot of times I have the opportunity to speak in a lot of public forums. And the easiest way to synthesize this is we believe a kinder, more connected community is possible through meaningful arts experiences. That's it. And that seems so simple, and yet it is such a big deal.
I think most people would agree we should find ways to provide opportunities for those interested.
Mhm.
But I also hear you saying there's a more
Integrated approach.
and
Mhm.
every kid would
Mhm.
benefit.
Mhm.
And so really that needs to be almost core curricula,
Mhm.
early years
Absolutely.
type of thing. Do you get invited to speak much to schools? Are people wanting that input? Do you see any trends that make you hopeful?
So I do see trends that make me hopeful. I do see trends that make me sad. Schools that are in districts that have more wealth, have more integrated and core curricula arts, and schools where you are just trying to make sure that your kids get to eat a meal every day, have less. And then that all contributes to that 30,000 foot, that macro vision of only certain kids are able to get to that level of storytelling and become those professional artists. And again, I want to be super clear that should not and is not the goal for most kids. But there are a lot of kids who are sort of born with that spark and won't have the opportunity to fully live that out. I think the schools that oftentimes could most benefit, the children who could most benefit from this access are also often the ones with the least amount of it.
You may be familiar with, there's an old poem, Elegy, written in a country churchyard. And I don't remember who wrote it, but basically a person wandering through a churchyard in a poor area of the country and wondering, I wonder what he would have been had he been born differently in a
Mhm.
different spot, kind of victims of birth
Mhm.
that not able to access the same thing that might have been, available to others. So are the arts a relatively expensive endeavor for a school? Is that one of the deterrents?
As far as the schools go, the schools typically are not where the investment comes. So I'll tell you sort of how we get into schools and what I think some of the barriers often are. So we have programs through Orange County Public Schools that fund opportunities for students who attend Title I schools to receive individual lessons. We cannot communicate directly with the students because of education privacy laws. So there is a little bit of a capacity burden on a classroom teacher to help facilitate communication between the individual students and getting them online for lessons to do all of those things. So there is a little bit of that. But more than that, I think there is also a distrust in these communities of, wait, I'm just getting something for free. I've heard that before, right? With the teachers a little bit, but also with the kids and with the families of the kids going like, you don't ever get anything really for free, right? And so you have to build that relationship and that rapport and that trust. And also, a lot of times Title I schools have the greatest turnover of teacher. So you might have a good relationship with that teacher for 1 or 2 years, and then they move on because it's easy to suffer from burnout when you see kids coming in hungry and unwell. It does take an emotional
Yeah,
toll.
you're doing much more than teaching.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so then from our perspective as a outside vendor, you're kind of back at square one of trying to rebuild that program. But you're also thinking, man, Diego and Kayla and Chelsea, they're all at that school and I don't want them to fall through the gap. So a lot of times we have to spend time going, hey, these kids are there. We know they have an interest and a hunger for this. Please, please, please help us get it back. Right. You also have to have a principal and administrator who is friendly to the arts, who sees how important it is. I will tell you, Orange County Public Schools we're very lucky to have an art superintendent and really committed to getting services to every student who wants it. But also, Title I is a federally funded program. So as federal dollars become at risk, inconsistent, they have to figure out what's going away. And again, we aren't making sure the kids literally eat so they stay alive. So it's easier to cut arts, even though I do feel in many ways it is so important. It is sort of that upper echelon. A kid's going to live if they miss their voice lesson. You can't say that if they're not always going to eat, that they're going to physically be able to maintain health.
But you could say that about whether it's some athletic or some
Sure could.
other programs.
Sure could, Dr. Middleton.
And
Sure
so-
could say that. There are other places to come from. And so I think that comes back to, let me look at your bank account and I can tell you what you value.
Yeah.
Because even going back to what you said about boys' mental
Mhm.
health and expression, right? Boys stop singing because they think it's not cool, period. It stops being cool. That has another context, which is it's because it's associated with femininity. And femininity is not cool, and they're taught to rail against femininity. I know this because I have a second grade boy. And every now and then I'll hear him say something like, oh yeah, I hate demon K-pop. I hate demon K-pop. I go, why? Why do you hate demon K-pop? Is that because girls really like it? Oh, I don't like Taylor Swift. Why? He doesn't dislike Taylor Swift. He doesn't dislike demon K-pop. He has already internalized the messaging that this is a girl thing. And I've heard other boys say that they don't like it. And so the cool thing to say is, I don't like it too. And not everybody has a mom who's like quite as hype on this, who goes, we're going to unpack that for a minute.
You're not getting off that easy, right?
Right. No, I tell my husband all the time because, he didn't necessarily grow up in that kind of environment either. And I go, oh, hold on. Let's get curious about that. Let's ask some questions about that, because it's very rarely what the surface is trying to tell you, right? So let's unpack that. But boys stop singing. They stop being artistic because it's not cool. A lot of times, oh, that's gay, that's girly, that's whatever, right? So they stop doing this. And to me, it is tantamount to cutting off your arm. You've cut off an intrinsic part of you, and most of them won't ever get it back. But if you make arts cool, if you treat arts the same way you treat athletics, and those kids are also the celebrities of the school, you can change that narrative entirely. And so that's
This
how
is Troy
from
Bolton.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's how we start looking at this totally differently. That's how we start sort of changing a next generation is by making it cool, not making it like, oh, only weirdos do that.
So how would you do that? What would be some things you would do to make music cool in elementary school and middle school?
hmm So remember when I was talking about bringing art into places where people already live, work, and play?
Yep.
Stop treating it like it's a whole separate thing.
Okay.
I think you should be having kids sing in English class. I think you should be incorporating it into as many sort of other curricula as possible. Infuse it in all of those spaces. And then it doesn't have to be this extra only if you want to kind of thing. Everybody does it. It's like PE, right? Um, I often use the metaphor of, you know, very few of us are going to be Usain Bolt and very few of us are going to premiere on the Metropolitan Opera stage. And yet most of us can go out for a walk and have the benefits that would reap for us. So I think the same is true. I'm not asking that every child be sort of a high level um, performer, but we send the kids out to PE to walk around the track. Right. And then we also have them move in class and we also dance around in class. We value that. I think part of the issue is the adults, the teachers oftentimes they don't sing along with the songs or they don't do those things because they feel silly or they don't feel like they're good at it. And if the teacher doesn't do it, the kid's not going to do it. Even if you bring in the special music teacher to do it, they're still looking at that primary teacher and going, well, she's not
Right.
singing.
And it's still, back to your previous point, it's still something very separate
Mhm.
as opposed to integrated.
Yep.
What about loneliness? Because there's obviously a lot said and accurately about children are becoming increasingly lonely.
Mhm.
What antidote do the arts and specifically maybe music? What does it have to offer to that problem?
First of all, if you're in my most spiritual experiences of my life between like holding my newborn babies and singing in a choir, like when you are singing and making art with a group of other people, there's something that happens that's greater than the sum of its parts. It's a, a spiritual
Mystical,
experience.
yeah.
Yeah. It happens sometimes in theater too, with the storytelling, with the interaction on stage. You feel that. Um, so first of all, being able to connect that vulnerably, that authentically in the way that requires, that's why we see, primitive civilizations were singing. They were music making. This is a human activity, not for special people, for everybody. Talent is a myth for the most part. There are some genetics that figure into it, but everybody is an artist. Everybody can be a musician. Um, so anyways, I just tangented off
Love it.
for
Yeah.
a minute because I get very excited about all of this. But when you think of loneliness, first of all, creating art is one of the easiest ways to connect. And there's a lot of neural science around that too, that mirrors almost what we see attachment happen with babies and mothers. That sort of synergy that we're seeing in the neural pathways that happens when you're creating art together. So that's really beautiful. I think a lot of times, and I'm guilty of this too, I think we all are to some degree, we get on our phones and we doom scroll and it's almost like we're because it's mindless and it's easy, right? I think we need to help kids stay present and art makes you be present. It keeps you away from the screens, which I think only becomes sort of cyclical with the loneliness. It engages you in a way that you can't do through a screen because you have to, one, connect with other people you're making art with, but two, connect with yourself. How do I feel right now? When you're doom scrolling, you don't really have to feel. You don't have to dig into the hard work. Making art, how do I feel? Why do I feel that way? Am I watching somebody else feel that way? How can I express this in a way that it also becomes an invitation to someone else to be expressive of their experience? And I think there, when you're sitting in a darkened theater and you watch something happen on stage and some expression, you go, damn, I've been there too. Watching that emotional experience mirrored back to you that's that goosebump moment. That's where you get chills. That's where you feel so seen. And just knowing that this isn't just you, it's a shared experience. That's the start to, I think, breaking down some of those walls.
A couple of things that just have stood out from what you've said, whether it was intentional or not, is on an individual sort of the emotional awareness and being in touch with oneself.
Mm-hmm.
And then in an interpersonal way, you said a few times vulnerable
Mm-hmm.
and then connection.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, if you're just thinking, if you could help your child become more emotionally aware and then foster relationships through vulnerability and connection, it's like, oh, that's home run. And then
Mm-hmm.
and you're just like, exactly, that's music and that's the arts.
Absolutely. My staff and my friends laugh at me because you kind of talked about it earlier, like swimming against the current. Like, I'm not afraid to be disruptive, positively disruptive, but disruptive. And so I will be in meetings and then I'll go, I'm sorry, I have a question. And I will talk to other adults that will say to me, oh my gosh, I think you just asked the questions. Why don't you? As grown adults, if we're not able to raise our hands and say, hey, I have a perspective that I think is relevant to this conversation or something that's missing, we have we're missing so many voices that need to be a part of the conversation.
Do you think that boldness has been fostered by the stage? And so you just said something.
100%.
So this is another benefit of kids having time on stage.
Oh my gosh. So, okay, I'll tell you this, the best way I have to talk about this, and I call it resilience, but what it really is, in my opinion, is self-efficacy, that I know that I can be uncertain or fearful of a situation and that I can do it. And that fear didn't mean that I wasn't supposed to do it, right? I can overcome this. That's an important life skill that the stage teaches, because every kid is going to feel afraid before they walk out and sing. And I'm absolutely going to like push that baby bird onto that stage because I need them to know that they will live. I am shocked by how many adults will be like, "Oh, well, I didn't do that because I was worried about it. I was nervous about it." I'm like, so every time I walk out, I do it. Like,
I feel like you need to say this again, because what you just described is like core exposure therapy for anxiety.
yes,
And so just say it again, as far as, and you don't have to say it exactly like you did, but just the idea of going on stage.
I need them to be afraid, and I need them to figure out that they can do it anyway. So one of our very first youth program, and we still have this, it's our Summer Institute. I've taught for everyone. I was on the initial faculty at Dr. Phillips Center when it opened, Orlando Family Stage, UCF. I've taught for everyone, Valencia College. When I created this program, it was important to me, like you were talking about your daughter before we came on earlier and all the different skills she was going to learn. It was important to me that I was creating a program that had a really diverse skill set, because I felt like when I came out of grad school, I knew how to sing well. I didn't know how much to do much else well in the art space. And so all of that was on the job learning. But what if we could give them a leg up on that? What I also thought was really important was individual performance, because there are kids that are artistic that will still hide in the back, that are afraid to put themselves individually out there like that. And I think every kid has a role, and some of it is painting sets, right? But I do think every kid needs to kind of put themselves out there and take that risk. So day one of Summer Institute, they audition for roles. And I have had kids over the 13 years we've been doing this who don't come back after day one. And I will sit there on the phone with their parent and plead with them, like, please just send them back. I know they were really scared. Please just send them back. Some of them don't. I would say that's less than 2%, but some of them don't, because it was too scary. I've never had a kid who made it to Friday when they do the solo voice recital who didn't walk on stage. Give me 5 days with your kid. I've never had a kid in 13 years who didn't walk on the stage and do it, and then didn't come off the stage, even if it wasn't their best performance, and still felt really proud of themselves for having been afraid and doing it anyways. We were doing some filming yesterday with one of my board members, and she was talking about a recital that her daughter had participated in. But what she most remembers about it is watching this little girl. Her name is Rachel. Rachel at that time, I think, was in 7th grade, and she was one of the most timid children that I ever taught. I had a jar on my piano that every time she said sorry, she had to put a quarter in, because it was constant. But she loved arts, but she was so afraid. So I worked with her. Her first recital, she's up there and she starts trying to sing and she's just not. She's just standing there and the pianist is still playing. She's not. She's like, and she's looking at me and she's going, and I go, and so I am sitting there and I'm singing at her and I'm like, you and me are going to get to the other side of this, but I'm not letting you walk away and I'm not letting you not do this. And she did. And she got through it and she didn't sing most of the song, but she got through it and she was in tears, but she got through it. That child is a activities director on a cruise ship right now. She went to the American Academy of Musical and Dramatic Arts, AMDA, in LA and studied. This kid would have walked off that day and probably would have never come back because whatever fear she had before she walked on, that is magnified tenfold if she walked off of that stage and didn't get through it. It's pushing through. I am afraid. I'm uncertain. And I'm going to do it anyway. And that becomes something that you just are like, okay, yeah, this is normal. It's normal to feel a little nervous. I am a person who has anxiety. The difference is I don't judge that or feel uncomfortable with that. Some days I wake up, I'm like, I'm feeling a little anxious today. Okay. It's not going to stop me from doing what I need to do. I just understand that that's where we are today and that's okay. And it doesn't addle me from being able to move through life.
I was in the same college fraternity as an actor, Tony Hale, who's in Arrested Development. And he was giving a talk at Google one time and I wasn't there, but I was listening to this talk and he talked about talking with his therapist and he had moved to doing some stage stuff and how they basically told him, you're going to have to act while scared.
Yeah.
Because he kept saying, when am I going to?
Never.
Yeah. And that was what they're saying. And so almost a freedom that he felt once he realized that is the gig.
Right. I'm not failing at that.
Yeah.
I'm not supposed to get to the point where you don't feel that. You just understand that you feel that and that's okay. And we're also able to move through that. Yeah. I'm always nervous before I go up on a major stage, or if I'm performing, if I'm speaking, but it doesn't deter me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's not a warning sign as much as it is, a sign you're alive or a sign you care or whatever. Yeah.
Whatever temperature the room happens to be. That's the degree of sort of connotative value I give it. Oh, it's a little warm in this room right now. Oh, I feel nervous before I go up on stage.
I heard a golf mental coach guy, he was talking about how dealing with the mental side of golf as far as feeling like, oh no, he was like, he would tell himself, no, that's just my brain doing what brains do.
Yep.
Yeah. And so kind of expecting it, normalizing it.
Performance psychology and sports psychology is nearly identical. Yep. And so it's how you feel about how you feel. It's not how you feel, it's how you feel about how you feel that really matters.
Interpreting your feelings and the way you interpret them. That's so interesting because one of the things we try to tell kids in the office is you need to not just listen to your feelings, but talk to them and not just obey them, but coach them. And what you just said, as far as how you feel about how you feel, that's a great way to say it.
I had a mentor who sort of coined this idea of what they call the brat. I actually, this is many years down the line, I have a lot of curiosity about like internal family systems therapy. And she used to talk about this idea of the brat. And I think it kind of aligns with this idea of IFS too. And so that moment right before you're about to go up on stage, you sometimes get this little voice in your head that's like, oh my gosh, but remember last time you sung this aria and you really screwed up that melisma right there. And like, how's the high note today? I don't know that you're fully hydrated. All of a sudden the chatter starts to get loud. I think that comes from a part of our developmental psychology when you're little and you're learning the rules in life, like, oh, don't touch the hot stove because the last time you touched the hot stove, that burned your hand, right? And so you start I don't have to tell myself, oh, last time I touched the stove, it burned now, because that's no longer needs to be a reminder, right? But right before you go out on stage, that part of you that is self-protective starts talking very,
and that's
very
the
loudly.
brat.
Yes, exactly. It's not coming from a place from, in my mind, of wanting to mess you up or sabotage you before performance. It's self-protective. And so the same way you would deal with a child that was going, oh my gosh, well, what happens if you go, you know what? totally understand why you feel that way. And I remember that happened too. But guess what? Here's our plan for today. And instead of worrying about that, you focus on this for me? Let me give you another job that's going to be helpful here. And actually redirecting that part of yourself that's sort of talking you out of it and redirecting it to something helpful. You know what? We did have trouble with that melisma last time we did this aria. Instead of worrying about how that could go badly, you know what I want you to focus on? Can we focus on how we're breathing today? And we're going to make sure the depth of our breath is really nice and low and grounded to help support us as we sing through that. There's a way to redirect all of those sort of self-sabotaging thoughts into a productive way, because it's not that the inside of your head is just a jerk. It's trying to protect you. So instead, actually help it do the thing that might be productive to help prevent those adverse outcomes from happening again, as opposed to just focusing on that outcome.
You just made such a strong case for the performing arts being a vehicle for cultivating mental health.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's just and obviously that's such a needed thing. Put yourself in the pediatrician's chair and say you're the pediatrician in the room at a 7-year well child visit, and you're writing a prescription for this family that's unique to what you do. Give an example of what you would prescribe.
And are we saying this kid is completely neurotypical, developmentally on point,
They're
healthy
just here
otherwise?
well visit. They're just basically here making sure that all is good, growing fine. I need my forms for school. And you're
What activities are you involved in right now? Oh my gosh, that's so great. You're doing soccer, for instance. Very, very cool. Are there any artistic things that you're involved in? Like, how do you get to, like, when do you feel most excited and happy? Mom, what do you see? Are we doing any, how is art going at school? How's music going at school? There's also another part of this that's just like truly emotional. And I heard this the other day, and I've started asking my son this at bedtime. I go, what kind of day did your teacher have today? Weird question, right? It's an empathy developing question. Because he has to go. And he said to me, he goes, she had a really stressful day. And I was like, oh, why? And he was like, Everett. I was like, Everett. I didn't even know about Everett.
Right.
Like, he's like, Everett just kept talking. And like, I was like, oh, that can be overwhelming. I was like, how do you feel when that happens? Now we're taking it full circle, right? And talking about the feelings. And so I'm just saying, sort of, one of it for me, an indicator about a kid is how easily will they tell me what they think and how they feel. If I see a kid who's tight, has a hard time doing that, I'm going to be prescribing higher levels of art and creative expression in any way that I can. I can spot a stage kid from a mile away. That kid runs up to me and wants to tell me about all of that. And I know that kid is already doing all of that. And I suppose maybe that precociousness can be annoying to some. I love it. I love to see a kid who is unapologetically themselves. And so when I see a kid who seems to not, and that doesn't mean that they have to be loud, but is unapologetically themselves, I go, cool. That kid is on the right track of being everything they were meant to be. And when I see a kid who seems to be somewhat withdrawn, I go, hey, what are some other avenues that we can explore? Do you know about this program? And not all art programs are created the same. You know, I obviously have a bias. Ours are excellent, but there are other great providers in town too. Orlando Family Stage does an incredible job. They're like, I would trust them with my kids any day of the week. They're incredible. There are a lot of different singing and dance programs. It can happen in all sorts of different ways, but especially when they're young, giving them a lot of different opportunities to explore what helps them step into the fullness of who they were meant to be.
Yeah, we all feel the society sort of is this forces of conformity, and the arts being sort of again a little bit of a protest move against that to be fully themselves.
Absolutely.
That's so great. So I think I asked you a little before, but again, I want you to say when you look out from the vantage point you have, what makes you hopeful about kids?
I think kids are born absolutely perfect. I haven't met a kid that didn't come out just really incredible, right? And I think that unto itself is a great reason to hope. And there are a lot more people who are getting hyped to how important this is. I think, the fact that we're talking about mental health
Mm-hmm.
more, even though we know that there's a lot of issues, we're talking about it, right?
Right.
That's a great first step. So there are people doing the work. There are people talking about mental health. They're talking about the importance of arts. You also see the other side where it's polarized and pulling away. And unfortunately, I think just like many other parts of society, you're seeing a greater sort of divide widen. I'm hoping, we talk about music being the universal language. That's a place where we all can meet
Mm.
and sort of pulls us back together and can have productive dialogue. Everybody likes music. Everybody likes TV, which at the end of the day is also theater. There's a script writer back there. There are actors on stage. We're consuming art all the time. And so bringing that more forefront, conversations like this, the more we have of them, make me hopeful.
Mm.
And it also makes me hopeful that I think almost every parent wants to do right by their kids. Um, and so the more knowledge we can give them, the more tools we can give them to be successful with that, the more adopters of, wow, arts help to create a whole human being. And I would really like to see my child get to adulthood as whole as they can be.
I have some rapid fire questions I want to throw at you. But before I do that, just one final thing. How, if someone was interested, how would someone in our community support you in Central Florida Vocal Arts?
I love that. This is the end of the year and we love year-end giving. So centralfloridaVocalArts.org /support. There's a lot of different ways to get involved. We are actively working on a capital campaign to get a building because one of our issues has been a great demand for more arts education programs. And without a space of our own and any autonomy to book that space, it's really hard to offer the programs to meet the demand of the community. So we're working on that. We're always fundraising because, again, a lot of the students that we serve do not pay for services. And so that's only through the generosity of the community. So our website, centralfloridavocalarts.org /support. That's also the place if you wanted to register students for summer programs, for voice lessons, piano lessons, guitar lessons. That's how you'd be able to do that, or learn more about the partner sites where maybe they already receive services that we would be able to bring services there if we don't already have a program.
All right, you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right. Just first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
Describe yourself in one word.
Passionate.
All right. I could have answered that for you. But that's favorite musical performance you've ever attended.
Oh God, that's like, what's your favorite kid? Who asked that question? I love Coldplay. There was a great Coldplay concert I went to where there were lights and there was a lot of community, and Coldplay, sure.
All right, great. If you were hosting Saturday Night Live and you got to pick the musical host, who would it be? Maybe you just answered.
Lady Gaga.
Oh, great. You have a guilty pleasure playlist. What would be the title of that?
Well, I'm a geriatric millennial, so like early 2000s, like trap rap, hip hop beats.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Go-to karaoke song?
Alone by Heart.
Oh.
You wouldn't have caught that one.
No, not at all. I'm trying to remember that. I remember Heart because that was from the 80s.
High note in it. That's like, it's a great show off for an opera singer. So like, how do I get you?
All right.
You can do all that kind of stuff. And like most people karaoke bars can't do that. So
That's
it's a little
right.
bit like of a flex.
That's a way to stand out.
Yep.
If you could perform a duet with any singer, living or dead, who would it be?
Oh my gosh. I mean, Pavarotti, just being on stage with the power of that voice. There's so many. These are hard questions. Oh,
that's it. Well, the last one, I feel like this wasn't a rapid fire that I wrote down, but I feel like I have to know for our listeners and for our team, your take on Taylor Swift.
I love Taylor Swift.
Okay. And
love
why?
Taylor Swift. All right, I'm about to music nerd out on you, but here we go. There are different schools of thought around it. When you are songwriting, are you music first and then you find the lyrics to match the sound? Or do you start with the words and you find the sound to match the words, to match the feeling?
Mm-hmm.
I've talked a lot about emotion, so this shouldn't be a hard guess. I am start with the words and the feeling and then find the sound. And I think her songwriting, the lyrics, the metaphors in it, I love it. I love that this new album is very happy because guess what? She's happy.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of like devotees are like, oh, this isn't Taylor Swift we know. No, because she's evolving. So like, be you, girl.
That's
like
right.
I love her.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this podcast is titled Caring Well. And the idea is that trying to come alongside parents and help them care well for their children. you are doing that in such beautiful ways. I feel like in some ways we have the same goal in that trying to help a community flourish. You're coming at it through the vocal arts. We're coming at it through children's health. And yet what you just did so beautifully in this conversation is show the ways that there's actually so much intersection
Oh
there.
my goodness, yes.
And so I appreciate what you do. I just hope you get blessed in all your efforts. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is a delight.